Well, thank you for all of your questions about our first video, which was about fertilizing mango trees. So covered some fertilizers and amendments. And today's video is all about answering those questions. So, of course, we have Har here, and I have the very difficult task of reading the questions, and then Har gets to answer them. Okay, well, we are here with Har, and we have a couple of specific situation questions that our viewers sent in. So, first one is, my garden has red soil, and it's top 60 centimeters, which is 2 feet, and beyond that it's white grayish clay. So a layer of 2 feet of red soil on top of white grayish clay, and very tough clay, which when it's dry, it's almost as hard as rock, but slimy when moist. So wonderful combination. All of my plants have been planted in the last 5 years. What's the best option on fertilizers for white and black sapote, mangoes, 3 different Monnicara species, longan, lychee, Asian pears? Sounds like this guy's the source of tropical fruit here. Asian persimmons, sugar apple, custard apple, chirimoya, atamoya, mountain soursop, guanabana, santal, eugenias, jackfruit, coconut palm, acai palm, avocados, pecans, ingas, and other Brazilian jungle stuff. So that's a whole lot of questions. So
yeah, it's too much of a question, but one can cover most of those species under most normal situations with palm fertilizer 8-12. But obviously for your mangoes and longans and lychees and probably the sapodillas as well, you would use a 0,322 or 0,316 on those. And I've never worked with this kind of soil, so if someone were asking me to do a consultation for them, I would definitely need to start with leaf tests and soil tests and well water tests to have something to go by. And keep in mind that most of my consultations are strictly about mango trees nowadays. Unknown as some, I have worked some with jackfruits and black sapotes and a few of these others, but don't consider myself really a specialist with them. You would need other sources of information probably, or just play it by ear, follow our recommendations for poor sandy soil and see if that works, follow someone else's recommendations for the redlands. In other words, Dr. Richard Campbell's recommendations down there, see how those work for you. Maybe some recommendations from people up in the Midwestern states of the United States growing corn. Just try different stuff. If you have several plants of each, run experiments. You'll figure out within 3 or 4 years what works.
do you think that looking at what they use in Georgia for peaches, for instance, might help? I'm just thinking with the red soil that maybe that would be a possible source of information.
Are the peaches there in red soil? Or sandy soil?
Well, maybe it's red.
I don't know.
It seems like some parts of Georgia have.
Yeah.
I don't. I haven't roamed in peach groves, so I'm not sure. But I just do associate Georgia with some red soils.
Yeah, like central Georgia. Yeah. Most down south in Georgia that I've seen is peanut farmland because it's sandy. Yeah, I haven't really noticed whether the peaches were on less sandy soil. One use of gypsum is to loosen packed soil. So whether or not that works in white clay, I'm not sure, but probably. Now, as a general rule, if the top 60 centimeters, 2 feet is one type of soil, and below that's another type, I would largely ignore the lower type. It's true that the taproots of the tree will be down in that lower type of soil and will bring up some mineral with the water, but most mineral absorption for plants is done in the topsoil from the feeder roots as opposed to the taproots. And so I would largely be concerned with how the top soil is, in the top 1.5 feet or 2 feet of soil. So that somewhat simplifies how to deal with this sort of situation. Same with the next question here, which is 2 to 3 feet of muck over limestone. So yes, a well-established tree might be able to get enough calcium from the limestone lower down, but initially your newly planted trees probably would not be getting enough calcium from muck. And I have not worked very much with muck except with thin layers of muck under sod in customers' yards. And I did find that harder to work with than just the plain sandy soil, because nutrients could get tied up because of water moving up in heavy rains, not soaking into the limestone layer underneath and moving up from the limestone up through the muck and raising the pH. Now with 2 or 3 feet of muck with limestone underneath, my question would be, is there good drainage through that limestone, or do you get white water, you know, coming up to the surface from the limestone? You would need really a soil test and leaf test to see what the nutritional situation really is. If the pH in the muck is high, that's going to be kind of tough soil to deal with, because muck itself will tie up some micronutrients with high organic content in the muck. And then if you get high pH on top of that, I would be hard put to figure that out. You would need to consult with someone else.
Yep, the soil and leaf testing is, those are two really good things to do for almost any situation. It's hard to know what your tree needs in a lot of cases, and then you get the results of the soil or leaf test, and you get a lot more clues as far as how to, treat your tree.
If you have large commercial groves, especially if they're in different fields and other properties, you probably will be doing leaf and soil testing at least once a year. For a homeowner, probably once in 5 years is going to be good enough. you won't be saving that much money by doing regular soil and leaf tests in a small area. You can just figure out what the situation is initially and play it by ear from there. If everything looks good, tastes good, is abundant, then you don't bother with further testing. In a commercial grove, though, you can save a lot of money by ordering custom mixes with only what you need in them. So even though most commercial groves are not looking to be organic production certified, they do look to save money on their fertilizer purchases. So in either case, the soil and leaf testing are worthwhile or even required. And of course, irrigation water, if it's from wells, you should test that as well, because that very much affects the soil conditions.
Yeah, I know that in this area, this area in general, the southeast coast of Florida, that there's been saltwater encroachment into some of the groundwater, and that definitely is something that affects most trees.
Yeah, if you're going to buy property that you want to put a grove on, that's something to check into. You do want to pay for a full testing of your groundwater, of your well water, if there's already a well there, hopefully. You need to have the irrigation suitability test and spray water suitability test. If you're going to be using the water for drinking water, you also need the potable water test to check for contamination by bacteria and so on. But the irrigation suitability test is going to be looking at the calcium and magnesium and potassium and sodium and many other ingredients. And you want also the total salts. And the electroconductivity. So one or the other of those two. And those readings will not only help you determine whether that property is even worth buying for a grove, or in the future it'll help you determine how much of certain fertilizers to put out. For instance, there's a formula for how much gypsum to put out. If you have too much sodium in the water, you can counteract that with specific amounts of gypsum application to be there ready whenever the rains come. And that can clean up your sodium problem for the next many months. And if your trees have been in the ground for 2 or 3 years, you can stop the irrigation water completely if you have the high sodium or high chloride or high bicarbonate in your well water. I do have customers who did buy properties for groves without testing for the well water first. And with one of those properties, I wish they had, if they had bought the property anyway, had planted it to coconut trees, which can take seawater, or to beets or melons, because all of those can take quite high sodium and chloride and bicarbonates. Mangoes are not a good candidate for well water that has issues, and you might want to check around to see if any of the neighbors' wells have issues, because if they are a little nearer to the coast and they have saltwater intrusion in their wells there, it may be coming towards you, especially if you plan on pumping out a lot of water. That kind of makes a suction for bringing that that salt water closer to you. That's why many municipalities have regulations forbidding new wells or highly regulating new wells or how much the wells can be used, because they're trying to reduce that suction underground, bringing the seawater closer to the what should be the freshwater underground streams.
So if you think that your tree might be suffering from too much salt, is there something that the homeowner could do to help that?
Yes, you can apply more gypsum than what we have recommended for the maintenance rate. You would go with the corrective rates that we've mentioned, which is several times more than the maintenance rates. If you've had the full testing of the well water and the soil, you can actually calculate exactly how much gypsum to put out. So in commercial grove situations, you would do that because you would save money, as opposed to just guessing how much corrective rate to put out.
Okay, well, I think that should complete that answers to that question. We have a short question here. What fertilizer is best when you notice leaves curling up at the tips?
I would need pictures, because that description could be anything from several different types of insects or fungus infections, or too much of some mineral salt, maybe even freeze damage or wind burn. You know, it's just a whole range of stuff.
Yeah, I don't recall ever seeing that on an in-ground tree here, and you know, the curling. There have been situations where young leaves have been damaged by either cold or like possibly mites and that kind of thing. But it's not. You don't normally get the curl from a nutrient thing. Do you think?
Yeah, of course we're mainly talking about mangoes, and some of these people may be asking about other trees. Certainly with annonas, the potato leafhopper cause leaf curl on those, and what look like nutritional deficiency problems. And are nutritional deficiency problems, but they're caused by intoxication from the ingredients in the saliva of the potato leafhoppers. It gets injected into the sap of the annona trees, and the leaves cup, sometimes up, but usually cup down, and that actually increases the survivability of the potato leafhoppers who shelter under the cup down leaves. The potato leafhoppers multiply in dry weather.
Okay, final question on these specific situations. When he is saying, that's you, that calcium is critical for black sapote and canistel, what is the primary problem associated with insufficient amounts? On both of these species, a neighbor and I had a lot of bloom this year, but poor fruit set. Could poor fruit set be associated with insufficient calcium for these trees?
Yes. And if the calcium deficiency is even worse, in the case of canistel anyway, the tree growth will be very slow. I have seen canistels planted and our poor sandy soils in the neighborhoods near here that like a 10-year-old tree in the ground was still only, I don't know, 10 feet tall or 12 feet tall, which is which without ever having been pruned is ridiculously small for a canistel, which could be well over 30 feet tall by then. So the trees that I've seen like that actually looked healthy, but when you found out that they had been there for like forever and hadn't grown enough and certainly were not fruiting, then there was something wrong. And that was calcium deficiency. It's not quite that simple though, because plants cannot use calcium even when it's abundant if there's boron deficiency or magnesium deficiency or manganese deficiency or copper deficiency. I think I covered the whole group, but you have to have well-rounded nutrition, but by far the most amount of calcium, because that is the most used or second most used mineral, depending on the species. With mangoes and citrus, it's known to be the most used mineral. I mentioned, I guess, in a previous video that I had a beautiful, very large black sapote tree that looked healthy, dark and green and all that, and would flower plenty but only give me half a dozen fruits a year. After I broke up sheetrock under the tree, then it was heavily productive for the next several years. Eventually it produced poorly again, and I had to start putting out granular gypsum. I no longer had the pieces of sheetrock around. With the canistel, I've not done an experiment like that. In my own yard, I always put out enough calcium, and my canistel have always been very productive.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for answering those questions, and I'm not sure why, but I suddenly have this urge to go out and spread gypsum around all over the place. It's sort of the common through line for most of these questions.
I would like to add some more to the reasons why. Not only because it's the most used mineral, that's just a very general, technical bit of information, but why is it the most used? Calcium is necessary to have strong cell walls. So each cell in the plant needs plenty of calcium in the cell walls. There are several other chemical functions of calcium within the cells. I don't remember the particulars of that. Calcium is also important in fruit quality, so is boron and zinc, so that you don't have brown or black spots inside the pulp without connections to black or brown spots on the skin. If the spots in the pulp are inside a fruit that has a clean skin, then in most cases that is due to calcium and or boron deficiency. Either one will affect the other if it's low enough, and will make those pretty much those same symptoms of spotting and hard spots or spongy spots within the pulp of fruits, not only mangoes but many other types of fruits. There can also be jelly seed. That's usually because not only is there not enough calcium, but there's too much nitrogen. That's one reason why we avoid applying a lot of nitrogen on mature, healthy mango trees, because we don't want jelly seed. Also, too much nitrogen and or not enough calcium and other minerals will make the fruits waterier, less tasty. It's a very easy to notice dramatic difference with carambolas. You can have sweet variety of carambolas growing in poor conditions with not enough available calcium to the tree. and the fruit can be kind of sour. If you put out a heavy corrective dose of gypsum and 2 or 3 times in the next year or two, you can use a Brix meter and measure the Brix, which is the total minerals and sugars in the juice of the fruit, and find that it's several points higher in your carambolas after they've received plenty of gypsum. A friend of mine, his name is Jeff Hagan, he posted about that on the Tropical Fruit Forum. Any of you who have not looked up your questions on Tropical Fruit Forum, that's not farm, that's F-O-R-U-M, internet discussion group, you'll find answers to a lot of your questions there. And he posted about his carambola trees and what happened after I applied gypsum at his place, and then he applied some more. So with our mangoes also, when they're getting enough potassium and enough calcium, especially when the calcium is from gypsum, we do get much tastier fruit. And also it helps that they have low nitrogen here. Commercial groves often want to to apply some nitrogen because nitrogen does increase fruit production on mangoes. But remember that the pulp quality goes down. So commercial growers have a chart with one line going up, that's the production line, and the other line, the quality, going down. And so they aim for the so-called sweet spot in the middle where the quality hasn't gotten too awfully bad and the production is not too low, because they want those pounds per acre to make their living on. A homeowner usually will get more than they can use from healthy, productive, good-sized trees, and so the quality for most homeowners is by far the biggest concern, and getting maximum tonnage per acre is not.
Well, thank you very much, I appreciate all the information you've provided for our viewers, and hopefully that's helpful. It sure seems like you've answered the questions very well, and that people will be having even healthier trees and better crops because of it.
Always fun.